The new wife of a magnate treats her stepson as a burden until he is supposedly forgotten for hours inside a locked closet during a party. The housemaid, suspicious of a pattern of neglect, begins to piece together what others pretended not to see. When she decides to act and tell the millionaire father, something surprising happens. The Hamptons glittered under the summer sun as Eleanor Reed navigated through the sprawling mansion where she had worked as a housekeeper for the past 2 years. The Anderson estate was hosting another lavish charity gala, with the crème de la crème of New York society flooding through its marble halls. Champagne flowed freely as Olivia Anderson, the glamorous second wife of tech magnate Robert Anderson, charmed guests with practiced elegance. Eleanor moved discreetly through the service corridors, carrying fresh towels to the guest bathrooms when she heard it, a soft, muffled sound coming from behind the basement door. She paused, listening more intently. The door was locked, which was unusual during an event when staff needed access to all areas for supplies. "Mrs. Reed, we need more ice for the East Terrace," called out Maria, another staff member rushing past. "I'll be right there," Eleanor responded, her hand lingering on the basement doorknob. Something felt wrong. She'd noticed 8-year-old Ethan, Robert's son from his first marriage, had been increasingly absent from family spaces. When she did see him, the once vibrant boy seemed withdrawn, thinner. Later that evening, after most guests had departed, Eleanor used her master key to unlock the basement door. The vast space was dimly lit, with storage areas and the mansion's sophisticated mechanical systems. Following her instinct, she moved toward the far corner behind rows of wine racks. "Ethan," she called softly, "are you down here, honey?" A shuffling sound drew her attention to a small storage room. Inside, she found Ethan curled up on a thin mat, surrounded by a few toys and books, looking startlingly small in the cavernous space. "Mrs. Reed," he whispered, his eyes wide with both relief and fear. "What are you doing down here all alone, Ethan? The party's over. Mom said I have to stay until she comes to get me. I'm being punished." "Punished? For what?" "For interrupting her phone call this morning. And for looking like my real mum." Eleanor felt a chill despite the summer heat. Over the next several days, she began noticing patterns she'd previously overlooked. Ethan's bedroom, once a cheerful space filled with model airplanes and science books, had been under renovation for weeks. He'd been moved to a small room near the laundry area with no windows. His meals, which Eleanor sometimes prepared, were returned barely touched, with Olivia claiming he was going through a picky phase. The boy was losing weight rapidly. His school attendance had become sporadic, with Olivia citing various illnesses. Most disturbing was the basement routine. Whenever Robert traveled for business, which was frequently, Ethan was confined there for hours, sometimes entire afternoons. Eleanor had worked for wealthy families throughout her career, but this calculated neglect sent warning signals through her entire being. One afternoon, when Olivia was at her weekly spa appointment, Eleanor brought Ethan a proper lunch and sat with him. "Has your dad seen where you've been staying?" she asked carefully. Ethan shook his head. "Mom tells him I'm playing or studying when he asks. She says if I tell him anything different, they'll send me to boarding school overseas and I'll never see him again." Eleanor noticed bruising on the boy's thin arms. When she gently asked about them, Ethan withdrew further. From her station near the kitchen, Eleanor began documenting everything. She noted Olivia's behavior: cold efficiency when alone with Ethan, performative affection when Robert or guests were present. She overheard phone conversations where Olivia discussed handling the situation and eliminating complications. What chilled Eleanor most was discovering photos of Ethan's late mother systematically being removed from family albums. Laura Anderson had been a renowned pediatrician before her illness. Her Foundation for Children's Healthcare still bore her name, a constant reminder Olivia seemed determined to erase. When Robert returned from his latest trip, Eleanor tried approaching him casually. "Mr. Anderson, I was wondering if you'd like me to prepare Ethan's old room once the renovations are complete." Robert looked momentarily confused. "Renovations? Oh yes, Olivia mentioned something about that. I've been so busy with the Tokyo expansion I haven't even checked. Is he comfortable in the guest room?" "He's actually in the small room by the laundry now, sir." Robert frowned. "That's temporary, surely." I'll speak with Olivia about expediting things. But the promised conversation never seemed to happen. Meanwhile, Eleanor discovered Olivia had been quietly consulting with estate attorneys about Robert's will and trust. Arrangements, discussions, that often ended abruptly when anyone approached. Eleanor's internal struggle intensified with each passing day. As a single mother who had raised 2 children on her own, she depended on this job's generous salary. The Anderson estate provided health insurance that covered her daughter's college tuition, benefits she couldn't easily replace. Yet watching Ethan's progressive decline was becoming unbearable. She began keeping a detailed journal, noting times, dates, and observations. Using her phone, she discreetly photographed Ethan's living conditions when cleaning his makeshift bedroom. She documented the meager food portions Olivia insisted were plenty for a child his size, and the basement confinement schedule that aligned perfectly with Robert's business trips. Eleanor approached other staff members cautiously. The estate employed over 20 people, many who valued their positions too much to risk involvement. But a few had noticed the troubling patterns. "I've seen how she looks at him when Mr. Anderson isn't watching," confided Carlos, the gardener who had worked for the family since before Ethan was born. "Like he's an unwanted package that was delivered to the wrong address." Martha, the elderly cook who had been with the Andersons for decades, shared similar concerns. The boy used to come to the kitchen all the time, asking to help bake cookies like he did with his mother. Now he barely speaks, and when he does, he looks over his shoulder first. Eleanor tried contacting Laura's sister, Jessica, who lived in California. The call went to voicemail, and her message carefully worded, "I work at the Anderson estate and have some concerns about Ethan that I'd prefer to discuss privately." 2 days later, Jessica called back. "I've been trying to get visitation with my nephew for months. Olivia keeps cancelling at the last minute, claiming he's sick or they have family commitments. Robert just defers to her on all childcare decisions." This conversation gave Eleanor the courage to attempt a direct approach with Robert. She requested a meeting, professionally citing household matters requiring attention. When they met in his home office, she started with minor issues before broaching the subject of Ethan. "Sir, I'm concerned about Ethan's well-being. He's losing weight rapidly, and I've noticed he spends unusual amounts of time alone in the basement." Robert seemed genuinely surprised. "The basement? Why would he be there? His playroom is upstairs. Mrs. Anderson often sends him there when you're away. Yesterday he was there from noon until almost 7 in the evening, with no food." Robert's expression darkened momentarily before smoothing into practiced neutrality. "I appreciate your concern, Eleanor, but I'm sure there's an explanation. Olivia mentioned he's been acting out lately. Typical behavior for his age. She's consulted several child psychologists." This was news to Eleanor. "May I ask which doctors? Perhaps they've recommended dietary changes that would be helpful for the kitchen staff to know." Robert hesitated. "I don't have that information offhand. I'll have Olivia contact you." That conversation never happened. Instead, the next morning, Olivia called Eleanor to her private sitting room. "I understand you've been discussing my stepson with my husband," she said. Her voice honey-sweet, but her eyes cold as winter glass. "I don't appreciate staff overstepping boundaries. Mrs. Anderson, I only mentioned concerns about his health. He's lost considerable weight and—" "Ethan has always been a difficult child," Olivia interrupted. "His behavioral issues require consistent discipline, which you're undermining with your coddling. Robert and I are in complete agreement about his care." Eleanor doubted this, but held her tongue. Later that day, she took a calculated risk. During Ethan's scheduled tutoring session, she drove him to Dr. Samuel Weber, her family's pediatrician for years. She had called ahead, explaining the situation as delicately as possible. The doctor's assessment was alarming: significant weight loss, vitamin deficiencies consistent with malnutrition, and stress markers typical in cases of emotional distress. Most concerning were the fading bruises on his upper arms and back. "Ethan, can you tell me how you got these marks?" Dr. Weber asked gently. The boy looked at Eleanor, then back at the doctor. "Sometimes I get locked in when I'm bad. If I try to get out, I fall." Dr. Weber documented everything, providing Eleanor with copies of his medical assessment. "This is concerning enough that I'm obligated to report it," he told her privately. But these situations are complicated with high-profile families. Having someone on the inside documenting patterns will strengthen any case. Eleanor nodded, understanding the immense responsibility she was shouldering. That evening she called her sister in Boston, a social worker who had handled child welfare cases for 15 years. "Keep gathering evidence," her sister advised. "Take pictures, make videos if possible. Get statements from other staff. And most importantly, continue building trust with Ethan. He'll need someone he can count on if this escalates." What Eleanor didn't know was that Olivia had installed additional security cameras throughout the house, including one facing Dr. Weber's office building, where the Anderson family car had been parked that afternoon, while Ethan should have been with his tutor. The morning after the unauthorized doctor's visit, Eleanor arrived at work to find the atmosphere at the Anderson estate distinctly chilled. Security guards she didn't recognize were posted at the main entrance, and her usual keycard access had been restricted to only the main service areas. Mrs. Reed, the head of security, approached her as she signed in. "Mrs. Anderson would like to see you in the study immediately." Eleanor's heart pounded as she made her way through the East Wing. She had spent the previous evening organizing her documentation, backing up photos to a secure cloud account, and preparing for potential confrontation. Still, nothing could have prepared her for what awaited. In the mahogany-paneled study, Olivia sat behind Robert's desk with the estate manager and a man in an expensive suit Eleanor didn't recognize. On the polished surface before them lay Eleanor's service phone, which she had surrendered upon entry as per standard security protocol, and several enlarged photographs. "Mrs. Reed," Olivia began, her voice glacial, "would you care to explain why you've been photographing private areas of our home without authorization? Or why you took our son to a medical appointment without parental consent?" Eleanor maintained her composure. "I've been concerned about Ethan's welfare, ma'am. His living conditions and physical state indicate neglect that I felt obligated to document." "What you felt obligated to do constitutes invasion of privacy, potential corporate espionage, and child endangerment," the suited man interjected. He introduced himself as Gregory Winters, the family's attorney. "We've also discovered discrepancies in the household inventory," added the estate manager, sliding forward a spreadsheet. "Several valuable items are missing from the East Wing collections, including Mrs. Anderson's grandmother's diamond earrings, which were logged in the safe last month." Eleanor felt her world tilting. "That's absolutely false. I've never taken anything. Yet the missing items coincide with your access logs to those rooms," Winters continued smoothly. "And your sudden interest in photographing private areas of the home suggests other motives beyond alleged concern for the child." "This is a setup," Eleanor stated firmly. "I've never stolen anything in my life. You're doing this because I've discovered how Ethan is being treated." Olivia's expression remained impassive. "We've already filed a police report regarding the missing items. However, we're willing to avoid pressing charges if you leave quietly today with a standard severance package and a non-disclosure agreement." The attorney slid a document across the desk. "This includes a clause acknowledging your unauthorized removal of Ethan from the property and waiving any right to make claims about the Anderson family in the future." Eleanor didn't touch the papers. "I won't sign anything that prevents me from protecting that child." "Then you leave us no choice," Olivia stated, nodding to the security head waiting by the door. "Please escort Mrs. Reed to collect her personal belongings, then off the property. Her termination is effective immediately." As Eleanor was escorted to her small staff quarters, she noticed Ethan watching from a second-floor window, his small face pale and frightened. She gave him a reassuring nod before being hurried along. Within hours, the damage control campaign had begun. An article appeared on a local news website about staff theft at prominent tech executive's estate. Though Eleanor wasn't named directly, the description made her easily identifiable within the community. Her phone began ringing with calls from confused friends and neighbors. By evening, social media accounts connected to Olivia's charity foundation had posted veiled references to the heartbreak of betrayal by trusted household staff and the trauma of having someone with access to our children betray that trust. The posts received thousands of sympathetic responses, including from several celebrities who had attended the recent gala. Eleanor watched this orchestrated character assassination unfold from her sister's apartment in nearby Bridgehampton, where she had retreated after being escorted from the estate. Her personal phone had been flooded with messages, some supportive but others accusatory, from people who had only seen Olivia's carefully crafted public persona. "They're trying to discredit you before you can speak out," her sister observed, watching Eleanor scroll through the notifications. Classic intimidation tactic. "It's working," Eleanor admitted, showing her a text from Martha, the cook, who regretfully wrote that she couldn't risk communication anymore. Everyone's scared of losing their jobs. That night, Eleanor received an anonymous email containing security footage from the Anderson estate, showing Olivia herself placing jewelry in Eleanor's locker while Eleanor was documented being elsewhere in the house. The sender identified themselves only as someone who's seen too much. With this evidence of the fabricated theft, Eleanor contacted Patricia Sawyer, an attorney specializing in employment law, who had helped a friend in a wrongful termination case years earlier. After reviewing Eleanor's documentation, the journal entries, photographs, medical report, and now the security footage, Patricia's expression grew increasingly grave. "This goes well beyond wrongful termination," she said finally. "This is systematic child neglect, with a coordinated cover-up. We need to approach this carefully. The Andersons have virtually unlimited resources and significant influence in this community." Eleanor nodded, determination replacing her earlier fear. "I promised Ethan I wouldn't abandon him. Whatever it takes, whatever the cost, that boy needs someone to fight for him." Patricia Sawyer didn't waste time. With Eleanor's evidence compiled into a comprehensive dossier, she arranged a meeting with Valerie Cortez, a respected investigator from the Suffolk County Child Protective Services. Valerie's reputation for handling high-profile cases with discretion and thoroughness made her the perfect ally. Wealthy families present unique challenges in these situations, Valerie explained during their first meeting. Their resources create additional layers of protection, private security, PR teams, influential connections. But evidence is evidence, and the law applies equally. The investigation proceeded methodically. Carlos the gardener, though initially hesitant, provided a written statement confirming he'd witnessed Ethan being forcibly taken to the basement on multiple occasions. Martha, despite her earlier reluctance, arranged a discreet meeting at her sister's home to share what she had observed in the kitchen regarding Ethan's restricted diet. Most significantly, Dr. Weber's medical assessment provided objective documentation of Ethan's physical condition, including precise measurements of weight loss over time, compared with previous medical records. "The pattern is consistent with calculated neglect," Valerie concluded after reviewing all materials. "The restriction of food, isolation in inappropriate spaces, and emotional manipulation are all forms of abuse that warrant intervention." CPS initiated a preliminary investigation, which Olivia anticipated and prepared for meticulously. When investigators made their mandated visit to the Anderson estate, they found Ethan in a hastily prepared bedroom that bore little resemblance to the cramped quarters Eleanor had documented. His hair was freshly cut, new clothes disguised his weight loss, and he recited clearly rehearsed answers about his wonderful home life. She threatened him. Eleanor insisted when Patricia shared these disappointing findings. "Ethan's terrified of being sent away. We need to get him somewhere safe before he'll speak freely." The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Jessica, Laura's sister from California, had maintained her own records of repeatedly cancelled visits and concerning phone calls with Ethan. Now armed with Eleanor's evidence, she filed for emergency temporary custody as the boy's closest maternal relative. Meanwhile, Patricia filed a whistleblower protection claim on Eleanor's behalf, effectively blocking the Anderson family's attempts to silence her with legal threats. The security footage showing the staged theft became key evidence, not only clearing Eleanor's name, but revealing the lengths Olivia would go to discredit perceived threats. As these legal maneuvers unfolded, something shifted in Robert Anderson. The tech executive, who had been largely absent during Ethan's ordeal, was forced to confront mounting evidence that couldn't be explained away by his wife's smooth justifications. When Jessica's custody petition included Dr. Weber's full medical assessment, Robert finally began asking the questions he had avoided for months. "Mr. Anderson called me directly," Patricia informed Eleanor one evening. "He's requested copies of all documentation." He sounded shaken. Eleanor wasn't surprised. "He's not a bad father, just a distracted one who trusted the wrong person with his son's care. Laura was the one who handled everything related to Ethan. After she became ill, he just checked out emotionally." Robert's awakening accelerated when he discovered, through his own private investigation, the extent of Olivia's financial motivations. Laura's will had established a substantial trust for Ethan, with Robert as trustee until the boy reached adulthood. Olivia, who had been pressing for joint access to these funds, stood to gain significant control over the family fortune if Ethan were deemed unstable and placed in residential treatment, a plan Eleanor had overheard her discussing with psychiatric consultants. The case reached a critical juncture when Judge Harriet Montgomery, known for her no-nonsense approach to family court matters, ordered a comprehensive evaluation of Ethan by an independent child psychologist. This time, Olivia couldn't control the narrative. The evaluation revealed significant trauma symptoms consistent with emotional abuse and environmental manipulation. Most damning was the court-ordered forensic analysis of the estate's security system. The timestamps revealed a pattern exactly matching what Eleanor had documented. Ethan's lengthy confinements in the basement, always during Robert's business trips, with Olivia electronically locking the door from her personal tablet. "The evidence is substantive enough for the court to act," Patricia told Eleanor after a preliminary hearing. "Judge Montgomery has authorized a temporary removal order. Ethan will be placed with his Aunt Jessica while the full case is adjudicated." Eleanor had spent weeks preparing for this moment, working with Jessica to create a transition plan that would minimize additional trauma for Ethan. They had selected a child therapist specializing in cases of family trauma, arranged enrollment in a small private school with experience supporting children in similar situations, and established a comfortable bedroom in Jessica's Southampton summer home, close enough to maintain connections with familiar settings, but safely removed from Olivia's influence. When the day arrived for Ethan's transition to his aunt's care, Robert surprised everyone by requesting to be present. "I've failed my son," he admitted to the CPS team. "I want him to know I'm committed to making this right, whatever it takes." The removal happened at Ethan's school, away from the estate's watchful security system. When Eleanor arrived with Jessica and the CPS team, Ethan's face lit up with the first genuine smile she'd seen in months. The following months unfolded with painful but necessary revelations. The full court proceedings exposed the calculated nature of Olivia's behavior, from systematically isolating Ethan from supportive adults to manipulating Robert with manufactured concerns about the boy's stability. Financial forensics uncovered her attempts to redirect funds from Laura's Foundation for Children's Health into her own vanity projects. Throughout the process, Eleanor remained a steady presence in Ethan's new life at Jessica's home. Though no longer his caretaker in an official capacity, she visited regularly, helping establish routines that provided security after months of unpredictable treatment. Together with Jessica, she created what child psychologist Dr. Renee Wilson called a container of safety: consistent mealtimes, gentle bedtime rituals, and predictable boundaries that gradually helped Ethan rebuild his sense of trust. Robert Anderson's transformation was perhaps the most unexpected development. The tech magnate who had delegated his parenting to others took a 6-month sabbatical from his company to focus exclusively on rebuilding his relationship with his son. He attended every therapy session, parent-teacher conference, and medical appointment, learning the details of Ethan's life he had previously overlooked. "I kept trying to fill the void Laura left with work," he confessed to Eleanor during one of Ethan's soccer practices, where they sat awkwardly side by side on aluminum bleachers. "I thought providing financially was enough. I didn't see what was happening right in front of me." Eleanor observed the subtle changes in both father and son, Robert learning to listen rather than solve, Ethan cautiously testing whether his father's attention was genuine and lasting. The breakthrough came during a routine weekend visit, when Robert discovered Ethan had inherited his own childhood interest in model rocketry. They spent hours designing and building together, creating a bridge across the years of disconnection. The final court ruling was unprecedented in its scope. Judge Montgomery, having reviewed the extensive evidence and expert testimony, issued a blistering judgment against Olivia Anderson. The court found her guilty of sustained psychological abuse, nutritional neglect, and attempted financial exploitation. She received a restraining order prohibiting any contact with Ethan, mandatory psychological evaluation, and financial penalties that included full restitution for Ethan's ongoing therapeutic support. More unusually, the judge granted a novel custodial arrangement. Jessica would maintain primary physical custody, with Robert sharing legal decision-making and having gradually expanding visitation rights contingent upon his continued participation in family therapy. Most surprisingly, Eleanor was formally recognized as a significant supportive adult with regular visitation rights protected by court order, an acknowledgement of her crucial role in Ethan's rescue and recovery. The Anderson case became a catalyst for systemic change. A prominent investigative journalist, Maya Crawford, documented the story in a series that exposed how wealth and social status could mask household dynamics that endangered children. The resulting public discourse led to enhanced training for educational and medical professionals in recognizing subtle signs of psychological abuse and neglect in privileged households. For Ethan, healing came in small but significant moments. His weight normalized under Jessica's nurturing care. He rejoined the science club at his new school, gradually reclaiming his natural curiosity. The nightmares that had plagued him during his first weeks of freedom slowly decreased in frequency. "Will you come to my science fair?" he asked Eleanor 6 months later, presenting her with a hand-drawn invitation decorated with rockets and stars. "Dad's helping me build a model of sustainable architecture, like Mom used to talk about." The mention of Laura, spoken freely without fear, marked a profound shift. Jessica had created a special place in their home with photos of Laura, stories about her work, and space for Ethan to remember his mother without punishment. Robert contributed by sharing videos and letters previously hidden away in his grief, allowing Ethan to reconnect with his maternal legacy. 1 year after Eleanor had first discovered Ethan in the basement, the extended family gathered to celebrate what they now called Family Rebuilding Day. Robert had sold the Hampton estate, purchasing instead a modest but cheerful house near Jessica's home to facilitate their co-parenting arrangement. Eleanor, who had found new employment managing household staff for a philanthropist with genuine commitment to child welfare causes, remained a beloved visitor and weekend companion for museum trips and library adventures. The most telling transformation appeared in Ethan's artwork. His therapist had encouraged expression through drawing from the beginning, tracking his emotional journey through colors and compositions. The early pictures, dark, confined spaces with small figures huddled in corners, gradually gave way to expansive outdoor scenes filled with multiple adult figures surrounding a central child figure. By the anniversary gathering, he proudly displayed his latest creation, a bright mural depicting what he called his constellation family, connected points of light, forming a protective circle around the center. "See," he explained to Eleanor, pointing to specific stars. "That's Dad and Aunt Jess and you, and even Mom watching from the sky." Different kinds of stars can make one constellation. Standing slightly apart, Robert watched his son's animation with quiet gratitude. He caught Eleanor's eye across the room and nodded, a simple acknowledgement of the journey they had taken, from employer and employee to unexpected co-guardians of a child's reclaimed future.